$17 million in government money.
By 1997, Chavez decides to run for president. His main opponent is a 6'1", blonde former Miss Universe. The contest becomes known as the Beauty and the Beast. The former Miss Universe is mouthing sugary platitudes while Chavez is preaching revolution, and that is what the people wanted to hear.
In Venezuela, the presidential election Sunday could lead to a sharp left turn in the government.
His supporters called it a punishment vote. It brought this man to power in Venezuela. A former military officer who has said he will fight against a tradition of corruption and economic inequity.
In 1998, 4 years after his release, as inflation rates in Venezuela reached 70% and the government made more cuts in social spending, the political establishment had been completely discredited. Despite the opposition of the entire media, Hugo Chavez was elected president.
Why is someone who staged a bloody coup just 6 years ago so popular among the people?
40 años. We resent 40 years of criminals dressed up as politicians.
A nivel político. Ese poder que ustedes me han dado, a mí no me pertenece. Ese poder es de ustedes. Ustedes guiarán el gobierno, que no será el gobierno de Chávez, porque Chávez es el pueblo, será el gobierno del pueblo.
He had promised far-reaching reforms to raise the living standards of the poor, enhance democracy, and share the oil wealth of the country with those who had never benefited from it in the past. Over the next 3 years, Chavez proclaimed Venezuela a Bolivarian republic and began to fulfill his promise.
Statues of the beloved Simón Bolívar, the liberator, look out on his birthplace, Caracas. He led 6 South American countries to freedom.
Bolívar. Bolívar es una foto como de Bolívar en la plenitud de su gloria. A lo mejor Bolívar en el Perú en toda su gloria, ¿no? Alguien dijo, Bolívar pensaba en siglos y miraba en continente, miraba continente. ¡Dale, viejo! Saludos, compadre, viejo.
Por segundo día consecutivo, altos funcionarios del gobierno de Washington expresaron su preocupación por la situación política en el país.
We have been concerned with some of the actions of Venezuelan President Chavez and his understanding of what a democratic system is all about.
Obviously, Venezuela is important because they're the 3rd largest supplier of petroleum. I would say that Mr. Chavez, and the State Department may say this, probably doesn't have the interests of the United States at heart.
Chavez's reforms provoked fierce resistance from the country's oligarchy.
Tenemos un gobierno mentiroso. Son un acto de embusteros.
They controlled the Venezuelan media and used it to foment opposition. They also mobilized support within the military and received help from the United States and Spain.
Pienso que lo más razonable para el señor presidente de la República y su gabinete es que o presenten voluntariamente su renuncia o desaparezcan del país.
A businessman, Pedro Carmona, was chosen to be the new president. He supposedly flew to Madrid to be measured for a presidential sash.
El golpe contra Chávez tuvo un motivo, petróleo.
Oil.
Bush planificó. Primero, Chávez. Petróleo.
Oil.
Segundo,
Second,
Saddam
Hussein, Iraq.
La causa del golpe en Venezuela
The cause of
y de la invasión a Irak,
coup in Venezuela and Iraq invasion.
La misma, petróleo.
On April 11, 2002, groups of Chavez supporters, as well as members of the opposition, were demonstrating in different parts of the city. Later, opposition demonstrators decided to march through the city towards the presidential palace where the Chavez supporters had gathered.
He wants us to become a Cuba. He wants this to become a communist. There is no doubt about it.
As they neared the palace, Suddenly, shots were fired from the rooftops of buildings and members from both sides were hit in the head. On a nearby bridge, the Chavez supporters took cover and returned fire in the direction of the snipers, as well as at the Metropolitan Police, who had fired at them 2 blocks away. The local media coverage of this event showed the Chavez supporters firing from the bridge and then showed the street where people had been hit in the head by snipers, manipulating the footage to make it appear that the Chavez supporters had fired these lethal shots. The media would also say that Chavez himself had ordered these shootings and used this as justification for the coup, which was already in progress.
In the end, this is what triggered the overthrow of Hugo Chavez. Armed gangs loyal to the Venezuelan president firing on thousands of anti-government protesters. After 16 people were killed and hundreds wounded, last night soldiers surrounded the presidential palace. Mr. President, I was loyal to you, the head of the army said on national television, but the killing of Venezuelans today was intolerable.
I was actually down below the bridge at the time and saw that the street was completely empty when the shooting was going on. When I got home and saw CNN and other news media reporting this, I was really shocked.
Comenzó a disparar y un muchacho que estaba aquí con nosotros fue herido en la cabeza. ¿Entiende?
De ese hotel que está aquí arriba, de ese hotel disparaban los francotiradores para este puente que está aquí atrás. En este puente disparaban a las personas que estaban montadas arriba.
It's a coup d'etat. They are saying that it's not a coup d'etat. It was a coup d'etat. He was taken into prison by the army.
Yo le vi el rostro a la muerte. Estuvieron a punto de matarme. Allí, fusiles apuntando por delante, por detrás, y yo discutiendo con ellos, recordando al Che Guevara, que dicen que murió de pie, y yo por dentro diciendo no voy a implorar perdón ni clemencia, voy a morir parado.
Much of the U.S. media welcomed the coup. The New York Times editorial board wrote, "Venezuelan democracy is no longer threatened by a would-be dictator." This reference to Chavez ignored the irony of what was actually taking place at the hands of a real dictator.
Se suspende de sus cargos a los diputados principales y suplentes a la Asamblea Nacional. Se destituyen de sus cargos ilegítimamente ocupados al presidente y demás magistrados del Tribunal Supremo de Justicia, al defensor del pueblo y a los miembros del Consejo Nacional Electoral.
Y dirigentes de Acción Democrática introdujeron ante el Tribunal Supremo de Justicia una declaratoria de insanía mental del presidente de la República, Teniente Coronel Hugo Chávez Frías.
Media in Venezuela became essentially a part of the opposition in the months leading up to the coup. That is, they were actively participating and supporting the opposition. And of course, I'm talking about the private media, which is most of the media in Venezuela. And what they were doing essentially was to broadcast every single opposition statement that was made. Many analysts even said afterwards that this was the first media coup, and actually one of the main participants in the coup even said that we have the media to thank for this coup.
Gracias Televen, gracias CMT, gracias Globovisión, gracias medios de comunicación.
La ex candidata presidencial Irene Sáez exhortó a la comunidad internacional a participar en esa transición.
Hoy yo estoy pidiendo al gobierno de los Estados Unidos y a todas las Naciones Unidas y a la OEA que la OEA enjuicie este proceso criminal en Venezuela, que han matado gente inocente y que todos nuestros gobiernos apoyen el proceso democrático verdadero que vive hoy el país.
The IMF, usually slow in responding to genuine requests for aid from starving Africa, was quick off the mark to demonstrate its support for the coup.
I hope that these discussions could continue with the new administration, and we stand ready to assist the new administration in whatever manner they find suitable.
The aim was straightforward. The IMF was making it clear to the world that the toppling of Chavez was in the interests of global capitalism.
And there's reason why Washington is almost certainly smiling.
We import more oil from Venezuela